to go from being unelectable when I first decided to run to being unopposed. America was a land of freedom, a land of opportunity, and a land where you can do both. You can be who you are and you can be successful as well. So my mother taught me at a very early age that Sikhi will give you character, will give you strength.
Main core concepts of Chaddi Kala, staying in positive spirits, Vand Shakna, that is, Seva, as you mentioned, and also, the Swant goes hand in hand.
My father, I said, well, I wanted to be a lawyer. It was a little bit confounding to him. He said, why not medicine? Not go into politics, no. I think.
Unfortunately, there were pamphlets distributed in the city saying, don't let terrorism run this town.
Guru Nanak said, fear none, but strike no fear in anyone. So they were the first Sikhs to enter the New York City Police Department through that litigation. Now we have hundreds of Sikhs in the NYPD. Yeah, I'm 50 years old. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, but you're one of the decision makers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rising Immigrant Show. My name is Jasmine, and today we're celebrating the Sikh Awareness and Appreciation Month. April is the time for us to learn and educate ourselves about the rich history of Sikh Americans and also to acknowledge their contributions to the society. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is Ravi Bhalla. He is the first turbaned Sikh to be a mayor in New Jersey, and he's also amongst the handful of people who've held this position in an American city. He's now contesting for Congress from New Jersey's 8th Congressional District, and if he wins this election, he will be the first turbaned Sikh to be in the Congress. We are very, very proud of him, and allow me to welcome Ravi. Ravi, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited to talk to you, and especially with, you contesting for Congress. There's a lot going on for you, so I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to sit down with you and see what's going on.
Absolutely.
So, Ravi, let's start from the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. So I am the son of immigrants from Punjab in India, but I was actually born in the U.S. From modest beginnings in New Jersey, in Passaic, New Jersey. We lived with my brother in a two-bedroom apartment in an apartment complex in West Patterson, which is now Woodland Park. Yeah. Very modest lifestyle. My father had just graduated from a university in the U.S. And was just starting his first job as a physicist at Westinghouse. And, I remember my childhood just being, being a part of a nice family, loving parents, a very supportive older brother. Obviously, as a Sikh, going into the public schools, ran into some headwinds there. But, I definitely had a solid, upbringing, when I was first born, yeah.
That's amazing. And when did your parents immigrate to the U.S.?
So my father came here in 1966.
Early.
Yeah. And he, I'll tell you a story. When he was coming to the airport from Kennedy Airport, he came to study a degree in physics from Penn State University. So he was going there to do his PhD in physics at Penn State, and one of his friends said, "I'll pick you up from Kennedy Airport, and I'll take you to the college campus." So he got picked up at Kennedy Airport, and on the way to college campus, they were just about to arrive at the campus, and his friend said, "We have to make one stop." And my father said, "What stop is that?" He said, "Well, let's make sure that you go to the barber shop so that you integrate with the kids, because you're an American now, and being an American means making sure you blend in well with the rest of the student body. So before they see you, as a Sikh, we want to make sure that you blend in and fit in well.
Look like others.
Yeah. And, my father was actually pretty shocked. He did not think that was what America was about. He didn't think that you should have to make a choice between who you are or your background or your faith and getting an education. He thought he can get an education and be who he is as a Sikh and as an Indian. And he didn't think that America was about that choice. He thought that you can achieve the American dream and be proud and celebrate who you are. So, fortunately, he said no.
He said no. And how old was he when this happened?
He was like in his 20s.
Wow.
But I think it was.
We're so impressionable at that age.
Sure.
I would imagine like any sort of, still I would say like a teenager pretty much.
Right.
Making that bold decision, did he come in with that, or was it like he landed here and he saw this and...
I think it's based upon his upbringing. I remember my dadima, my dadaji, they came from a strong Sikh family. And I would, think that they instilled certain values in him about the importance of his heritage and his faith. And but he was surprised that he was being told to that there was a trade-off in America between your faith and being an American. And he didn't come to America for that reason. He thought that America was a land of freedom, a land of opportunity, and a land where you can do both. You can be who you are, and you can be successful as well. And I really think that if he had made a different choice, he decided not to sacrifice his articles of faith. But had he made a different choice, we might not be talking here today.
Exactly.
So
it would have been different.
Sure.
It would have looked different
Absolutely.
for you and for us.
Yeah.
So did you have to face challenges growing up here in New Jersey, going to public school system?
Certainly. I went to a school that was not very diverse. It was, largely white. So, kids picking on you, only because of your skin color. And as a student in kindergarten or first grade or second grade, I didn't know what to do. So, my mother would always tell me, if kids pick on you or call you names, definitely report it to your teacher. But she did draw a line. And that line was that if they actually touch your hair or pull at your jura, you have my permission as your mother to defend yourself.
Right.
So one day, my mother got a call from the school, and they said that we want to bring you into school, and I thought I was in trouble. And they said that your son had had gotten into a physical altercation with a child, and my mother asked the teacher, what was that about? And they said, well, they were pulling on his hair. And she said that, you know what, I actually gave him permission to defend himself.
Right.
Because, when somebody, does that to your article of faith, which is, we consider sacred, we have a duty to defend ourselves. So my mother taught me at a very early age that Sikhi will give you character, will give you strength, and that if there's any attack on our faith, that we should defend ourselves, and stand proud for who we are.
Absolutely. And I'm raising a young, Sikh boy, actually two now. So it's very important for me to understand that as well. I've often questioned myself on what should be our approach, right? They definitely look different. And, more times than not, kids don't really pick on them because they want to be mean, Sometimes they just don't know. There's also that ignorance factor. And when the kids are so young, they'll comment on anything and everything, right? Anything that looks different because they're curious.
Right.
Eventually, yes, as they progress and they grow older, of course, there's, different connotations to it. But kids as young as kindergarten, it's usually, and I've had this situation in my school as well, where somebody would say something, but, my son, we're now at this stage that he knows how to, talk about it.
Okay.
He's very young, but we've had these conversations at home, and I think what your mother did was incredible to sort of prepare you for that moment, so we don't feel, attacked in that moment.
I think you're very right. A lot of what when your kids are that young, it's just demystifying and it's just curiosity about something that's different. And one thing that my wife and I, we also have a young boy in the public schools, is that during Vaisakhi or during an appropriate occasion, we'll take a classroom session and we'll show people this is a patka, this is a turban. turban. This is what I wear, and let the kids touch it and feel it, and so that it's not something that's
it's
like
not
mysterious.
intimidating. Exactly.
Yeah, and say that it's give a short presentation on why our son wears this, and I think it's very refreshing because you're educating young kids,
Right.
and you're satisfying their curiosity.
Right.
And then,
Well, it's also, at my kid's school, they celebrate Chinese New Year. He'll come back home with like a goodie bag with like things, and he'll try to explain it to me. So they also enjoy learning about different cultures. It's just like the kind of environment we expose them to early on,
Right.
and the conversations we have with them early on. So they're prepared to handle such situations at school, and then eventually when they grow up at work and,
Absolutely.
other places outside of home.
Yeah.
So Ravi, tell me a little bit about your education. Where did you go to school?
Sure. So, I went through the New Jersey public school system. I graduated from Montville Township Public High School, and then I made that leap from the East Coast and went to school in California at the University of California, Berkeley. I really went there because my Masiji, she lived in the Bay Area. Two of my cousins had graduated from Cal, and she was almost like a second mother, being near the Berkeley campus. So my mother was comfortable letting me travel to California for my undergraduate studies. So I majored in political psychology, which was a mix of political science, psychology, and sociology, just to understand the psychology behind political actors, behind individuals, how they react to different politicians. And it was an interesting experience. After that, I went to school in London at the London School of Economics, and I completed a master's in public administration and public policy. My dissertation was on what's called consociational democracy in South Africa. So that was during the time when there's a transition of government from the National Party to Mandela, and they actually had to create an executive branch that was power sharing, between the new leadership and the old leadership. After that, I went to Tulane Law School, and after Tulane, I started my career as a practicing attorney.
Got it. So you have an incredible track record there.
Sure.
And how did you decide on becoming a civil rights lawyer, going through this transition? I see you're inclined towards public policy and administration from the beginning.
Yeah. I had an inclination for civil rights through, my exposure to the human rights causes for minorities in India, especially, after the tragedies of 1984 and the years afterwards, seeing what was happening, to the Sikh community within India and a lot of refugees seeking political asylum gave me a special sensitivity towards the fact that our community was under attack, and that it was incumbent upon us to make people aware, make politicians, make members of Congress aware of what was happening, so that when the U.S. provides aid to a foreign country, they make sure that aid is used properly. It's given to a democracy that respects human rights, respects the rule of law, respects the same things that we do as Americans. So that gave me a special sensitivity towards civil rights. And when I became an attorney, I thought this was an area of law where I can both succeed as an attorney, but also give something back to people who might be on the sidelines. They don't need to be from the Sikh community or the Indian community, but they can be from any community or any protected class. Could be a woman who's being sexually harassed, a person who is not granted an accommodation because of a disability. It could be based upon ethnic background, national origin, familial status. There is a lot we can do in this country to uplift people who need a helping hand. And I saw that the law was a very effective means to advance and help minorities and to make sure that they also have a seat at the table.
Got it. So what about your action in the courtroom. Can you share some interesting stories from the courtroom with us?
Sure. One interesting story that might be pertinent to this conversation was, after 9/11, I'd read a newspaper article about a young man who wanted to be a parking enforcement agent of the New York City Police Department. So he applied to be an NYPD, it's called a PEO, Parking Enforcement Officer. Their job is two things. It's to direct traffic and it's to write traffic tickets. You might see them. They have white hats and police uniforms. He had applied to be PEO, but was told that he could not maintain his turban and beard as a condition of the uniform policy at the time. So he had asked for an accommodation to that policy. And, usually when they ask for an accommodation, the employer goes to somebody from his religious background to see if the accommodation is reasonable, if it's consistent with the faith. This time the NYPD did not go to somebody in the Sikh community. They actually went to an imam, from the Muslim community for guidance, and was told that that he's permitted to keep a beard of 1 millimeter, which might be
That's
guidance
odd.
for a Muslim applicant, but was not the correct guidance for a Sikh applicant. So the level of ignorance at this time, and this was around 2002, was staggering.
And there's also a lot of hysteria at that time,
Right.
Sikhs are usually perceived as who we are not, and not saying that the Muslim community should be targeted. I mean, that's
No, of
incorrect.
course not. Yep.
In the first place, but just because there's that confusion, and also because we have a distinct visual appearance, it makes us a target of.
Yes.
So what happened then?
So our argument was very logical. And the legal test is also logical. It's what is it about my religious faith or appearance that would cause me to be unable to do my job.
Right.
And in this scenario, the question is, what is it about being a Sikh that would impede or hinder my ability to write traffic tickets or to direct traffics? The answer is absolutely none. Any human being and any Sikh can write traffic tickets or direct traffic. We actually at the time got the Attorney General of New York involved. We were able to settle that litigation along with another officer, and they were the first Sikhs to enter the New York City Police Department through that litigation.
Very nice.
Now we have hundreds of Sikhs in the NYPD, and I'm very proud to say that as a civil rights lawyer, we paved the way about 24 years ago for the first ones to come in there.
That is incredible. So how did you then go on to contest for the Hoboken City Council? When did you move to Hoboken, and how did that happen?
Sure. Right after I graduated from law school, I moved to Hoboken because I thought it was.
So you were practicing here in Hoboken?
I was practicing. Actually, I had a job at a law firm in Newark, New Jersey. My parents still lived in New Jersey, but as a 25-year-old bachelor, I wanted to be near New York City, and Hoboken is actually just across the river from Manhattan. So I felt like it was an ideal place to be because it's 1 square mile. It's manageable. It's close to my law firm where I worked in Newark, in New Jersey. Also close to my parents in New Jersey, but also close to Manhattan as well. But then, I did not even know who the mayor was when I arrived there as a 25-year-old, and I was really focused on, just being a good lawyer, developing my legal skills as an attorney in the courtroom, conducting trials, and developing those skills at that time.
And were you married at this point?
No,
had you met your wife?
I was not married at that point. Within a few years, I had met my wife, Bindi Navneet, and eventually we had our first child. And Hoboken, we saw was changing a little bit. In terms of people were staying for the long term or wanting to stay because the conditions were getting better. It was still a very transient community, so a lot of our friends at the time would maybe be single, get married, and eventually move to the suburbs. And unfortunately, we saw that happening a lot. and it was really because of the local conditions on the ground with the government. We had taxes that were going up 70%.
Right.
Our bond status rating was junk bond status, so we couldn't borrow for capital projects like buying a fire truck, basic things like that. Our mayor at the time had overspent the budget by $12 million.
Right.
There was a fiscal monitor had come in, and I looked at what was happening. I said, it's a real mess. And, my wife and I, we were frustrated about it, and we wanted to do something about it.
Oh, that's wonderful, taking it on yourself and, going ahead and actually doing something. So how long did you serve on the city council?
So I served on the city council for about 8.5 years.
8.5 years.
2 of those as council president. And it was really a chance to, make a turnaround. I came in with a good team of honest citizens who, were getting involved in politics for the right reasons, not because we had some agenda to, enrich ourselves, which we saw too much in Hoboken. We saw a lot of patronage, a lot of ineptitude. So we had a committed, smart team led by a mayor who cared about the community. And in my 8 years in the city council, we saw a turnaround. By the time I got into my 8th year, we'd started at junk bond status, and now we're at AA+, which is the highest rating a municipality can get. So that leads to lower interest rates for capital improvements, which ultimately benefits the taxpayer
And also the community. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
It's a great achievement. So how did you go on to become the mayor then? What motivated you to contest for those elections?
It was really a continuation of that success that we had seen. The idea that if you want to stay in Hoboken, you should be able to stay for the long term. And the job of local government is to make sure that those conditions are there to raise a family, to set roots, and maybe even to retire. So that means the schools have to be good.
Right.
The streets have to be kept clean. There has to be adequate open space. There has to be adequate recreational opportunities. You just have to run a good city. There's no Republican or Democratic way to fix a pothole. It just takes a lot of competence and good government. So we saw that trend happening over a course of 8 years. And, I saw an opportunity to be the leader of the city and to kind of continue that progress. And that's really what motivated me. We saw that we can make change as individuals by getting involved in the public square.
Right.
As an Indian American and a Sikh American, I saw that the opportunity was there, that people cared a lot more about your ability to deliver on things that matter, infrastructure, fiscal responsibility, open space. Then they care about, your faith background or your race or your ethnicity or how you identify. So, I thought that, Hoboken was a good place for me to kind of continue that progress and elevate the community even further.
And you've done an incredible job, and we're very, very proud of you. So this is your 7th year as the mayor of Hoboken.
Yes.
You talked a lot about, what you focused on, initially when you started out on this journey. Would you like to share some of your accomplishments, something that you're really proud of?
Sure. One thing that was very difficult that we all suffered through was the pandemic.
Right.
During the pandemic, there were difficult decisions that had to be made, and they had to be made by mayors and governors. One of those decisions was, unfortunately, in March of 2020, we had to make the difficult decision to lock down the city of Hoboken because the pandemic was coming both from the Far East as well as from Europe. And hitting the streets of New York and New Jersey. I was told by my political advisors that if you shut down the city, your political career will be ruined. It's not the right thing to do because
it's a very bold move, and especially if you're going to take that decision early on when there was so much frenzy. Nobody knew what was going to happen and what was it going to look like.
Right.
So, taking that decision early on, what was it like? How did you guys handle that?
No other mayor or governor in the entire United States had taken on that decision yet.
Right.
So I was actually the first, and I didn't know what would happen. One of my sergeants of the police department, after I made the decision, said to me, Mayor, you have an election next year. And if you do this, this can impact your election negatively because nobody in the country has done this. My response was very simple: is that if I can just save one life, because public service is about public safety and saving lives, and I don't get reelected, I can sleep well at night, and I'm happy with that decision. But I didn't know what would eventually happen. Fortunately, the next day, I turned on the TV. Hoboken was on CNN, and Ashish Shah and Sikh American, these public health experts, was saying that the rest of the country needs to do what Hoboken's doing.
So how did the community respond to it?
It wasn't easy, especially for small businesses, because they're impacted by that. But we had many, many conversations with the businesses. We saw opportunities through federal funding to support small businesses. We innovated. When people could not be indoors, we created outdoor spaces for them through parklets, through streeteries, to make sure that our small businesses survived. So I think through constant communication, which was key, and you might have noticed yourself, those constant reports, daily updates. This is the count of people who've been infected. This is the count of fatalities. Here's where you can get tested. We were the first city in New Jersey to have rapid 15-minute testing. Really trying to be ahead of the curve. I think gave people a measure of confidence that we're on top of it and we're being proactive. We're not just reacting to circumstances, but we're trying to think 2 or 3 steps ahead and make sure that our community is safe. Because again, public safety and the sanctity of human life is the number 1, 2, and 3 priorities of any public official.
Oh, that's wonderful. Talking about your family for a minute, I know your daughter Arza is now 16 and Shabig is 14.
Yes.
So you've lived in Hoboken for a while now.
Yes.
And at the last event when I met Bindya, she mentioned that Arza was a year and a half old when you guys first started knocking on the doors, when you were contesting for the council. And she would carry Arza in a stroller. So I'm sure, your time in the public service has greatly influenced your family, your wife Bindya, Arza and Shabig. What do you have to say about it? How's the influence or what is the effect of it at home?
I think it's overall a good effect. Shabig is 12 now, and Arza is 16. But they've gotten to know, how government works from a very unique perspective, maybe the type of perspective most kids wouldn't see. It has admittedly jaded them a little bit because they don't just see, the positive news on Twitter, or we release all the good news, but the daily life of a mayor, is not always the best for a child. When I have to be away, at odd hours to really, do my job in terms of public service. So it's been a range. It's been, I think, mostly good because they see the impact of positive public service, and they have a sense of pride that their dad is leading the city. So that obviously instills them a sense of pride. But they have also a holistic, wide-eyed view that, this is not an easy job either.
So what do they aspire to be?
Not go into politics, no. I think that might be the last thing that they'd want to do. But they're still young,
and it changes quite a bit,
absolutely.
Till you actually really graduate and get out in the world.
Yes.
And even then, your aspirations and whatever you want to be, it evolves over time.
It does. It did with me. I always say I'm 50 years old. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up.
We're all trying to figure out that.
So that's okay, and as young kids, the daughter is in journalism. journalism and business.
Oh, wow, that's exciting.
But when she goes to college, I hope she'll get exposed to a lot of different areas and really just finding your passion. I think in traditional the Punjabi, Sikh, and Indian areas, we focus on. My father was focusing on engineering for us, or wanted
be
me
a doctor,
to be
an engineer,
a physicist. I didn't get my father's genes as a physicist, but or medicine. But I think there are a lot of other opportunities where the Indian and the Sikh community can add value. In the arts, in literature, in music, in sports, in fashion. There's so many and you can do that through different avenues. You can express those passions through business, for example. So I think what America Creates for Sikhs is a very broad platform for the next generation. I think our parents created that foundation to give us the opportunity to get exposed to different areas, and it's on us as the next generation to see what we are interested in and to elevate the community in a diverse manner of ways.
Yeah, and I think one reason, India is known to produce engineers and doctors is because we found success in it, right? This was a given path. We knew if we do this, we'd get success, right? Sure. So there was a lot of focus on education, and even still is. There is a lot of focus on mathematics. There's a lot of focus on science, like STEM-based activities. But now we've come to learn, like, if you do anything well, you can achieve success. So the only indicator of success now is, like, how much are you willing to put in to get out of it.
Right.
So that's why that has given us a lot of freedom, and we've seen other careers play out. At the last episode, when I was talking to my sister, and she's a fashion designer, when she first started influencing, we had our doubts, right? What was that going to look like? Is it a real career in the first place or not? But now, as these careers are progressing and you see them doing well, you get a proof of concept, and you're like, okay, we can do it.
Yeah, and even with my, my father, I say, well, I wanted to be a lawyer. It was a little bit confounding to him. He said, why not medicine? But gradually he got to appreciate the value of practicing law.
No, I think
and even with
a lawyer still counts.
And even with politics, my mother was like, "Why do you want to go into politics?" But I think over the course of 16 years, has come to appreciate that if you work hard and if you do a good job, it can be a source of pride, not just for yourself, but you can help other people, both within the Sikh community and within the community that you represent, in this case Hoboken. And really at the end of the day, that's what being a Sikh to me is about. It's about public service, it's about seva, and seva not just in the Gurdwara, which is important, but seva within our entire community. That community doesn't have to be the Sikh community, but it could be the neighborhood you live in, the school environment you're in, just those basic concepts of giving to others, helping others who need a helping hand. Those are ingrained in who we are.
Exactly.
And if we take those
some of the core principles of
Sikhi. And if we just take those into the American public and practice them, then just by practicing them, that will elevate our community as a whole.
Right. That's great. Ravi, if I talk about trying anything new, be it a different career or like even when you're in politics, you go and knock on the doors. It can be really daunting. The biggest, fear is the fear of rejection, or somebody would completely ignore you.
Right.
When you're talking to your children or you're talking to your family, how do you overcome this fear of rejection, and how do you have your children go forward, keep going?
Yeah, I really think it's a matter of coming outside of your comfort zone. So I'm not a naturally extroverted person. I'm introverted. I love listening more than talking. But, when you knock on a door, it is a daunting thing because you don't know who's on the other side of the door, if they've had a bad day.
And how are they going to perceive you in general?
And if they're in the middle of dinner and then they see me, they don't know who I am. But, that's that human to human contact that really changes perceptions. When they see that, you are just like anyone else, you live down the block or somewhere else in the city, that you care about the same things about, making sure that we have a balanced budget, clean streets, open space. they understand that, we are all one community. So, knocking on doors and engaging the public is very important, I think, to making sure that the general public knows that Sikhs are Americans just like anyone else.
Right. And if we talk about your mural campaign, unfortunately, there were pamphlets distributed in the city saying, don't let terrorism run this down. It was very upsetting for a lot of us. How did you respond to that? What was your sentiment?
It definitely was very upsetting. It was my daughter was about 12 years old at the time, and actually probably a little bit younger. And she had seen that pamphlet or that leaflet, and that was her first experience with racism. That was her first experience where the Sikh turban was associated with something negative. She'd always seen that as something that's associated with something to be proud of.
Sure.
So it was a little bit jolting to our family, but it was also a call to action to make sure that we say that this is not what Hoboken stands for. This is not what we stand for, and that made us fight even harder to make sure that that election was won, and that we stood up to fight against and combat that type of bigotry, that type of racism.
No, absolutely. And for your second election, you won unopposed. So that is the testament of your work and your dedication. So I would like to say that, hard work and dedication, it comes above everything.
Sure.
We might look a different way, but the biggest takeaway from that incident is if you work hard, you can maintain your unique Sikh identity and still keep going. And that was an important lesson for all of us, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first ran for mayor, people said you're unelectable because there are not many Sikhs in Hoboken. It's a very Italian city.
Right.
So they said that, Hoboken is not ready for a mayor with a turban and beard. But here I am 7 years later as a two-term mayor who had actually ran unopposed for a second term. And the reason why that's remarkable is because, as you might know, Hoboken politics is it's a blood sport, and you have to have thick skin. You can't be faint of heart. And everybody runs in every election because everyone wants to be the mayor. That all of my former colleagues on the city council, they all want to elevate to be the mayor. So to go from being unelectable when I first decided to run to being unopposed is really a story about the fact that if you work hard, if you prove yourself, that the possibilities in this country are limitless. And your Sikhi, your identity as a Sikh, is something that's only going to make you a better American. It's going to make you more successful in life, no matter what you do. And I think the fact that I can be the mayor of a city of 64,000 people as a Sikh in a city that doesn't have a large Sikh population is evidence that in this country there's no conflict between being a Sikh and being an American. That same kind of conflict that was posed to my father in 1966 when he first came to this country, and he rejected. We should all reject because I reject it now, and I think my service as mayor is also evidence that being a Sikh makes us better Americans too.
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. So let's talk about your race for the Congress. Oh my God, we're so excited. You are contesting for the Congress from New Jersey's 8th Congressional District. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's an exciting race. This is history, not just for Hoboken, because we would have the first Hoboken resident to serve in Congress, but also for the Sikh community. We'd have the first turban Sikh to serve in American history in U.S. Congress. And as a child, lobbying members of Congress about human rights violations that were occurring in India, what I saw is that I had to teach or educate members of Congress about our identity, about what was happening in terms of geopolitics. And I was on the wrong side of the table, the side of the table where I was asking for something rather than being in control of our destiny. So really the opportunity that this creates is being on the right side of the table, where you're not asking for a decision to be made, but you're one of the decision makers. And that's the type of representation that we don't have in Washington right now as a Sikh community. And, it's in that way where I view this campaign, not as my campaign, but really our campaign to elevate the community and also to tell younger generations, our kids and maybe our grandkids that you can do whatever you want as long as you believe in it. It doesn't have to be politics. It could be fashion or art or music or writing or medicine or engineering. As long as you're passionate about it, I'm sure you can do it.
No, absolutely. And with that being said, there's so many eyes on you. There are so many young children who look up to you. Even if I talk about my family, I have 2 young boys and they look up to you, a Sikh being a mayor and also running for Congress now. Do you ever feel the burden of expectations?
No, I always say I take one day at a time. I have no 5-year plan or 6-year plan. I just try to do the best I can in the moment every day. And I think, with, Guruji's Kirpa, things will take care of itself. And, in my life, I think things have naturally taken care of themselves. And, sometimes people say that, pressure is privilege, so you have to look at it in that way, that, I have an opportunity that many people don't have the opportunity to do, which is help people other than myself.
Right.
To help maybe your kids, to give them some confidence, to give them some inspiration, no matter what they want to do, that if I can do it, there's nothing special about me. So if I can do it, really anybody, the sky's the limit. Anybody can be who they want to be and be successful.
And has anything surprised you so far while you're on the campaign trail?
Just the sheer intensity of it. It's definitely a high profile campaign that's taking a higher profile as we get to election day. So the amount of work, I did not actually also realize how much money is involved in politics, which is, I don't think, a very good thing. But the fundraising aspect, when you're a mayor or a councilman, is not as important.
Right.
But when you elevate to higher levels of office, that pressure is even harder than you'd ever imagine. So that's a little bit of an adjustment. I'm used to talking to people, to knocking on doors, and really connecting, being in the field, so to speak, and campaigning. But I think, in American politics today, at the federal level, sometimes, money has an outsized influence in how people are elected and how politics should work, which I don't think is always very fair. I'd almost prefer a more level playing field, but making that adjustment is really something I've had to do.
No, absolutely. And what about this? If I wanted to get your opinion on the big presidential race coming up.
Sure.
It's been exciting. So, what do you think are going to be our biggest challenges and opportunities for this race?
Well, the big, I'm biased because I'm a member of the Democratic Party, but I think that, if you saw the track record of President Trump during his 4 years, it's something that's really concerning about another term where, our rights are just diminished, as women, as minorities. My wife is originally from Iran, so during this Muslim ban, she was separated from her family, from her parents. So there were a lot of things that happened during that time where our rights as minorities were not respected, were not treated equally. So I think a lot of it is on the line. I think the Roe v. Wade decision is on the line. Trump was able to stack the Supreme Court, to get to that reversal, through Gibson. These elections matter. I always say elections have consequences, and they always say that this is always the most important election that we'll ever see. But I would say that this is a very important election. So if you are registered or if you're a U.S. citizen, my advice to you is to please register to vote if you're not already registered, and really make your voice heard at the ballot box, because they always say that if you don't vote, you can't complain. And if you have the ability to vote and make your voice heard, and also tell your friends and your family, even if you cannot vote, there are ways to get involved, to volunteer with campaigns, to spread awareness. We live in a participatory democracy where what you do matters, and people should never underestimate their own ability to make change in this country. I think this is very important.
I'm glad
to
you said that, because as a first generation immigrant, it's hard for me to get involved. I usually watch from the outside as a spectator. So a lot of us don't know how to get more involved in the American politics as much as we want to, and we should.
Sure.
Living here, we should have a say in the politics, and that what makes us, a democratic country in the first place. So I'm glad you mentioned that, how to get more involved as a citizen, as a community member, and to uplift our, communities and folks in general.
Sure.
Ravi, what advice would you offer to anybody who's starting out in politics, or starting out a new business, or anything new for that matter?
Yeah, I think start small. When I first started my law firm, an elder attorney gave me the advice that don't let it be daunting. All you actually need to start your law firm is a chair, a desk, a pen, a business card, a printer, and a computer.
That's
right? And that's how I started my law firm, with no clients. But eventually, within 6 months, I had a steady flow of clients, and things happened organically. Same with politics. I didn't expect to be involved in politics, but as a new lawyer, I picked up a couple of clients who were on the Hoboken City Council. And I was representing those city council members as an attorney, but that gave me an inside view of Hoboken politics. So you kind of start small. I started at a very hyper-local level, as it was called, a committee person. So committee persons often run uncontested, because these are local, like hyper-local offices that nobody even knows about. So I said, I'm not going to run for Congress as my first run. This was back in 2007 when I ran for committee person. I'm going to start small. There's a saying that all politics is local, and kind of learn from the ground up. So I served 2 years as a committee person. Then I served 8 years as a councilman. Then I served 7 years as a mayor. But I looked at it as a long game. So my advice to people is, don't try to, force yourself to be a billionaire your first year when you're opening your business. That might not happen, but look at it as a long game. You have to start small and keep on building from there, and you'll achieve a success along the way.
Oh, thank you. That's an incredible lesson. And Ravi, if we talk about your role models, do you have any role models inside and outside of politics? Who are the people you look up to?
Sure. I would have to say I look up probably more than anything else to my mother and father. They are really genuine people, as I'm sure.
Yeah. Their spirit is unmatched.
Spirit of generosity and giving. They're always supportive, unquestionably. And I try to take that and instill that type of love into how I raise my children. So I think there are no greater role models for me on the inside than my mother and father. On the outside, I look to our history as Sikhs, and I see the type of sacrifices that our ancestors have made, so that we can sit here today as two proud Sikhs having this discussion. I think of Guru Arjan Dev Ji and the torture that he went through. I think of the Chote Sahibzade and the courage they had at such a young age, not to sacrifice their faith. I think
to stand up for the whole community on
the I think of Guru Tegh Bahadur, who's the first example of somebody who sacrificed his life not for his own religion, but for the rights of another religion. And those are lessons that we should be teaching our children, because they're not just stories. They're stories that are associated with certain values. And those are values that I think make Sikhi and make our community very strong and resilient. And we need to teach our children about our history. There's an Ethiopian proverb that says, people who forget their past have no future. And I think it's important for us to remember these types of role models, because for me, they give me strength. If people can go through so much difficulty, and sometimes the ultimate sacrifice, of their life for us to live free,
Right.
then just working in this society, comparatively is much easier. So that gives me
It does give us a lot of strength, to deal with the problems that we face in our daily lives. Sometimes when you look at such an extreme example, like Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji's story is an extreme example of sacrifice that he did for his community, and then his son Guru Gobind Singh Ji and Chote Sahibzade, Vadde Sahibzade. So, looking at that family, like if they can do so much for the community and put their own attachments, love for their family aside,
Right.
and why can't we? That's such a big example, and I'm glad you sort of look up to them. And
it's a tall order, but it goes back to what I was saying. I think being a Sikh and being a proud Sikh is something that, unlike what my father was told, it's actually something that is the best gift that we've been given.
Right.
It's the best gift, and it really is a key to I think our success as Americans.
Right. And there's a lot of things, which are common with other faiths and other religions, as to say, because, the main core concepts of Chardhi Kala, staying in positive spirits, Vand Shakna, that is, Seva, as you mentioned, and also, Daswant goes hand in hand.
Right.
And they give us a lot of strength to deal with our life here in America as well.
Yes.
Because these are the principles that any, person who has a good foundation comes from. So I guess holding on to them makes us even stronger and not weaker. And
Right.
that's my personal
Right.
belief, and using them in our own ways possible and having our own impact in the society we live in and in the communities we interact with is very important.
Right. Yes, and especially respecting other faiths.
Exactly,
I like to say that something that Sikhi teaches us is that no one has a monopoly on the truth. We all have our own paths, and we should just respect each other's paths and respect everyone's right to live their life as they see it, as long as they do no harm to others. Right? Guru Nanak said, "Fear none, but strike no fear in anyone." So, I think these are lessons that we can learn.
Wonderful. I think we'll end on that note.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
This was such a
thank
meaningful
you.
conversation.
No, I appreciate
and I
it.
really enjoyed your company sitting here talking to you. And I'm so glad that you drove all the way up here and sat down with me. Thank
It's
you.
an honor to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.